Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. I hope all of you can hear us and see us. If not, please give us a sign. Today, we are here to announce a new partnership between TAUS and Phrase, which is all about the integration of our tool, Epic, into the Phrase ecosystem. And my name is Dace Zerguset. I'm the COO at TAUS, and I will be the host of this session today. And I'm very happy to have two guest speakers with me from Phrase, Andreu McGurk Lastres, Senior Partnerships Manager, and Jakub Janiczkowicz, the Enterprise Solutions Architect. Thank you guys for being here.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And quick agenda overview. So we will start with an introduction to Phrase and TAUS, to those of you who are perhaps not that familiar with these companies yet. I will explain what quality estimation is, what it is, how it works, and why you should be paying attention to it now. And then we will jump straight into the demo of how the integration works and looks like in Phrase. And if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A box, and we will address them at the end of the session. So let's get to it. Andreu, tell us more about Phrase.
Thanks, Dace. It's great to be here and to have this very exciting announcement with our partners over at TAUS. I'll give a very brief kind of high-level overview of Phrase as a platform, because this is truly at the heart of our DNA, right? We are a platform. Some of you will know us as a TMS traditionally. As we all know, this is rapidly evolving over time in this new reality that we're operating in. And I like to kind of frame Phrase as a kind of comprehensive language technology infrastructure that kind of comes ready-made for any enterprise-grade multilingual operation, designed to seamlessly deploy AI in a highly governed and scalable way, whilst preserving all the different workflows and kind of use case specific requirements for optimal resonance at a global scale. So kind of at a high level, all the different kind of components of the Phrase platform can be, let's say, summarized into a first layer of ingestion. Okay, so different entry points for the platform for all multimodal content types. Phrase TMS on the one hand to kind of ingest marketing specific content that might reside in websites and documents or other formats. Phrase strings, which is geared towards software localization and app or UI specific localization at the heart. And then our new component, Phrase Studio, which is geared towards multimedia oriented localization as a whole as well. So these entry points allow you to ingest a wide range of different multimodal content types. The four running our central infrastructure of AI solutions through the content. And again, we have a combination of kind of LLM/machine translation specific engines for raw or pre-translation, as we call it, but also the ability to add a layer of agentic work, which will be kind of a good central point for today's discussion, as well as the right guardrails from a quality perspective, which, as we'll see today, not only do we have our own proprietary technologies, but also integrate very seamlessly with partner technologies like TAUS. And thereafter, I think also kind of all the different components that are truly enterprise grade when it comes to automation, right? So adding as much automation to your process as is feasibly possible, but also again preserving those quality guardrails to flag when something does need a kind of a human input to review. And critically, which I think in the current environment is becoming increasingly prominent and important, is analytics, right? So being able to, in near to real time, be able to see what's working, what's not working, where certain fixes might be required, and get a holistic perspective of your entire operation. And I think beyond that, as an extension to this is our concept of an ecosystem, of really being kind of an ecosystem-led platform, right? So being able to be the connective tissue for a range of different solutions, both where content resides, but where other solutions can interact seamlessly and interoperably with Phrase. So we have been ecosystem-led from since our inception, but I think as the launch with TAUS will show, there has been a dramatic acceleration on this front in the past couple of months or so, where we're dramatically opening up the ability to interact with external technologies or best of breed solutions. But I'm sure we'll touch on this more. But as a whole, again, a comprehensive language infrastructure to power both with AI and with human input, any multilingual content operation as a whole. Back over to you, Tatsi. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. So yeah, a few words about TAUS. So simply put, at TAUS, we help organizations to get more from their language data. And we focus on 3 core areas. First up is quality estimation. We will talk more about it later today. But the concept here is simple. It's about predicting how good translation is without a human having to read every single sentence. We automatically analyze translations, flag the sentence with risk, and tell you where to focus your review efforts. Next up is data optimization. If you work in localization, you probably have massive amounts of language data, such as old translation memories, past projects, but often it is disorganized. And here we can step in to clean, structure, and transform that messy data into high quality data sets that can be used to improve AI models. A third, NLP consultancy. NLP here stands for natural language processing. And since no 2 companies are the same, off-the-shelf AI or machine learning solutions often fall short. And this is where we come in and partner with teams to design custom NLP solutions, whether it's benchmarking QE model performance, or pulling insights from complex multilingual data, or getting the data ready for any AI application. The goal is to make multilingual AI more practical and actionable for each specific use case. So now that you know a bit about us, let's see how this all connects to this EPIC integration that we are showcasing today. So EPIC, in short, it is a tool that tells you exactly how reliable your machine translation is, automatically and in real time. It stops you from treating every piece of translated content the same way. Instead, it quickly flags where you can trust the machine outputs to publish it right away, and where you absolutely need human review. It is not meant to completely rebuild your process. It just adds a smart new layer of intelligence to what you already do, helping you make quicker and more confident decisions about translation quality. So why is this critical right now? The reality is that most translation teams still require 100% review of machine translated content. Everything gets post-edited every time. But the evidence shows that over the half of the content is already good enough to publish as is, without any change needed. The issue is that you just don't know which part of it that is. So it means that organizations are wasting time and budget reviewing content that already matches what they need. And this is the inefficiency that quality estimation tries to solve. So let's get into the mechanics. How does it work, and how do we actually generate these scores? Behind the scenes, we use a highly efficient language model built for one specific purpose: quality prediction. It's also important to note that this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. The model can be easily adapted and fine-tuned to your exact content type, to your industry domain, and your specific quality standards. That way, the QE model learns your definition of quality and then applies that exact standard consistently across all the content that you translate. and this makes it much more effective and practical than any generic tool because it fully aligns with your quality expectations. Before we move on, a quick but crucial word on data security. Epic runs on AWS infrastructure, meeting enterprise-grade security standards. This includes measures like encryption, strict access control, and industry best practices. Most importantly, we do not retain your data when you send us content. It is processed to get a quality score, and then it is immediately discarded. It is never stored, reused, or used for training of our models. And for the automated post-editing feature that involves OpenAI, we ensure we use their enterprise-grade APIs, which also guarantee that your data is never used for training. And with that, back to you, Andrew, just before we get to the demo.
Thanks, that's it. And maybe as I alluded to in my kind of introduction of Phrase, right? I think there's probably a bit of an elephant in the room that I'd like to address, right? Why integrate with a partner like TAUS when Phrase has its own quality performance score technology? And the answer is really simple, right? I think, as I mentioned, since our inception, we've been kind of an open ecosystem platform at heart. We've always aggregated multiple machine translation engines to give our customers the best kind of optionality and choice. Increasingly, we're aggregating more and more large language models into the platform. We've also been kind of vendor agnostic from a kind of language service perspective to give customers the freedom and the choice to pick the vendor that best basically aligned with their requirements and their different content types. And I think one area where we've dramatically accelerated has been particularly around AI technologies, right? I think particularly when it comes to quality performance scoring is, let's say, an acceptance that while our solution can work very well for many use cases and can kind of be catered to for a range of customers, we're not necessarily the be all and end all. We can't basically provide the best solution for every single customer in every single corner of the world. And this is where what we see the platform equaling ecosystem, right? Both are at a par. And what we really want to ensure is that firstly, we can optimize access to best of breed solutions for our customers, right? And give as seamless an experience as possible for customers who, whether through choice or preference or both, or for use case specific needs, that Phrase is not seen as a blocker, but actually as an enabler to the best solution for their workflows. But being able to do so in a way that it compounds across the entire operation as it is set up within Phrase as well. So I think that in the last couple of months, what we've really invested heavily in is dramatically opening up a series of APIs and capabilities at Phrase to make this possible. But equally also investing in kind of creating a seamless experience for partners, right? And creating an optimal work surface that enables partners to easily build on Phrase, right? So where Phrase increasingly takes a role of being the kind of the central infrastructure that holds all of the customer solutions together with the right enterprise-grade solutions to underpin it, both from an automation perspective and from an analytics perspective. But equally, the partners are equally, encouraged and incentivized to build these solutions on top with the best possible experience. And ultimately, I think what we see this leading to is what we call a flywheel effect, right? So every partner that builds on Phrase makes the platform more valuable to our customers. More customer adoption and more value being realized through the Phrase platform attracts new partners to build more solutions. And from this perspective, everyone wins, right? Customers get optimal value from their workflows. Partners can use Phrase as let's say, a channel of growth to promote their solutions to a bigger marketplace. And ultimately, Phrase is the connective tissue that brings it all together. So from this perspective, it's an area that we're investing in heavily, and really kind of looking to expand the capabilities as we accelerate our ecosystem capabilities. And I think central to this has really been phrase orchestrator, right? So having the ability to implement these partner solutions directly into your workflows in a way that is highly automated and that can be, let's say, flexibly adapted to your specific needs. Okay, as Jakob will showcase shortly, our TAUS integration is featured as a template in our orchestrator module. But again, the beauty is that you can kind of combine that with other solutions that you want as well, and have the ability to tailor the use of TAUS and other technologies to your specific use case. So again, flexibility, user experience, but ultimately, let's say, optimal value realization at the core of all of our solutions within the phrase ecosystem. So with that, I'll maybe hand it back over and go to the next slide so we can actually see this in action, hopefully.
Yeah, and I will stop sharing the screen so that Jakob can start his show.
You should be able to see my screen now.
Yes.
Okay, let me make it a bit bigger. Still see it? Still okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, like Andrew said, it's part of the ecosystem and integrated into Orchestrator. So I'm starting on this screen on purpose to show you the login screen. I like to start here so you don't get lost when trying to navigate where to find this. So this is what you see, and this is where the magic happens, which is the phrase orchestrator. And more specifically, it's in the template library, like Andrew said. So we have this prepared as a blueprint, so you can basically take it out of the library, configure a few things, and get it up and running. So to show you how that works, this is the template library. And as you can see, there's two workflows for Epic. We named them specifically part 1 and part 2 for reasons I'll get into a little bit later. But in general, the processing happens on the TAUS end asynchronously. So the jobs arrive a little bit later. So the workflows are not waiting for one another. That's why we have two. One is asking TAUS to do something, and the other is taking stuff from TAUS once the magic finishes. So the first one, triggering the work in TAUS in Epic, basically means, like Andrew said, this is highly configurable. This is something we seen with other customers. This is how usually this happens. So your trigger is pre-translation. So when a pre-translation from your translation memory machine translation happens, that's what triggers processing in TAUS. And this step right here is the way we like to set things up for these partner integrations. Is we like to keep these in two separate workflow steps in Phrase TMS so that you can still capture what came from your resources, and then you have a separate step with the edits coming from TAUS. So you can see and compare, as you'll see in my, the other part of the demo, how the things change, not only the scores, but you can also request edits to be done from the Epic. So you could do both, just scoring or scoring plus edits. And if you want to see how many edits actually happen and what kinds of edits, that's where we have this right here. So you can still keep both states at the same time, both workflow steps. And this is just the request to TAUS, sending the mxlif. TAUS can handle the mxlif file that we support. And that's how the job is started. This is where the first workflow ends. The configuration, we will get to that in a little bit. I just want to give you a high level overview. So that's the first part. The second part is, like I mentioned, that's triggered from the TAUS's end. So this is triggered by a webhook. So once you are registering things with TAUS, we will get to that. You will register a webhook as a dedicated URL for this specific trigger right here to let TAUS know where to send the notification to when they finish processing the job from the previous step or the previous part of the workflow, because it can take some time before, depending on the size of the file, how long it takes TAUS to process your content. So you don't want to wait for anything, right? So that's why we have the URL, we have the webhook trigger. Once this is done, no pressure, TAUS will send the notification, and that will initiate this workflow to download the job from TAUS and upload it back into Phrase. So that's the high level overview. The a little bit lower level overview is how to actually configure it. I have this named a little bit differently just to kind of keep it clearer. This is sending and this is downloading. So for sending, you have the pre-translation trigger. The template has the filtering that you may have noticed on top. That's on purpose because you maybe don't want to trigger everything on your entire account because you can blow through your allowances in minutes if you do that. So we intentionally have filtering there so you can do it on a specific project metadata, subsets of projects and things like that. So that's the configuration that Andrew was also mentioning. Here, these ones, you don't necessarily need to touch. There is just the token you may need to fill in. But what is important is you need to have your credentials from TAUS. So you need to have access to TAUS, that's suffice to say. And once you have that, generate an API key for Epic. I'm not going to be showing you that because I don't want to show you my secrets and use my tokens. But once you have that, you will register it as a variable here in Orchestrator so that it can be referenced in the workflows themselves. You don't have to tweak things here. This is all documented on our help center, so you can go back to that and actually do step by step. But it's just high level. Once you have the API key, you will put it in here so that it can be referenced in the workflow. And what is important for Orchestrator, all of this is nice and dandy, but you actually need to publish the workflows, otherwise nothing is happening. That's kind of the Orchestrator 101. And then the second thing you need to do once you are in TAUS and getting your API key, when you set this workflow up, actually upload and create this one from the library, download from TAUS, this webhook URL will be generated for you. So you first need to pull things from the library so this can be generated. So you can copy this and create the webhook in TAUS. So you can register this URL so TAUS knows where to notify you once this happens. And again, nothing else you need to tweak in here. All of it is pulling in from the variables, and then you just publish this workflow. So you essentially need to do two things. You need to get the API key from TAUS, and you need to set it as a variable. And the second thing, you need to get the URL from us, from the second workflow, and register it with TAUS so it knows where to notify you once the jobs are processed. So to actually see it in action, I won't be triggering things live because the demo effects, and it would probably take a long time or not work at all. So I have a very bad German file in here. As you can see, this is really bad. And it's a funny tidbit. I actually had to ask GPT to generate a bad German file because it was really performing well, as I didn't want it to, but how it happens. So how we would trigger this workflow is simply pre-translation. We can pre-translate with our resources. You see I'm in a translation step, and I can trigger pre-translation. Once I do that, when the pre-translation finishes, it will automatically trigger the first step, and you're just sitting back and waiting for things to happen. Once this is processed, you can see I have a second workflow step here. All the changes will be uploaded in the second one and automatically downloaded. So if I open it here, you'll see all the segments are marked. And this is on purpose. I have the threshold set very high. I want to get everything. So you can see all the segments have been touched. And like I said, you can actually see things that have been modified, and you can do it in the translation changes. So for example, this one, right? So you can see this is what came from our resources, and this is how TAUS has edited it. And you can go through this one by one. You can use filter rings. So you can look for changes in specific workflow steps. So this is going to pre-filter only the segments that have been changed. Like I said, it was almost all of them, but not all of them. And the last tidbit here, if you don't want to go segment by segment, depending on your workflow, you can actually do this export workflow changes, which shows you kind of track changes like view between the two steps. And that's one of the other reasons why we keep two separate workflow steps, so we can actually show you the differences. It's perfectly fine to do this, based on your workflow and have Epic make changes directly in the first step. You don't have to have two dedicated ones, but we like to keep it like this, so you capture what came out of your resources before it was edited. Similar to human editing, similar to human review, you keep track between the two steps. And that's basically how it works in a nutshell. Like I said, I'm not triggering it live because we don't want to wait some time for the results to arrive, or I would probably trigger something wrong and it wouldn't work. So this is, you can imagine this worked live when I did it a couple hours ago. And that's how the integration works.
All right, thank you, Jakub. You can, okay, yes.
Mhm.
I should go back to sharing my screen again. Okay, so perhaps all the different steps that Jakub showed to you just now were a bit too quick to grasp, and that for you to understand what exactly you need to do to get started. But don't worry, we are here to guide you and not to help you get lost. And in general, so what does it mean to get started with quality estimation? What are the steps that you should take into account? Because sometimes it can feel, oh, is it magic? Is it some kind of number that you are supposed to rely on now? No, we want you to make sure that you understand what it is. So step number one really is to understand the fundamental concepts of quality estimation. It is about shifting from reviewing everything to predicting quality upfront. And that does also mean taking a different approach than to sending everything to human reviewers and relying on them to do the job. While the point is to avoid having an unnecessary review and only do that where it actually is needed. And this is then where the step two matters, defining the balance. So you need to decide what is acceptable balance between risk and confidence. And that means determining how strict or flexible your quality standards need to be for a given use case. When you're ready to test, you need to choose the content wisely, making sure that it is representative of your typical translation workflow and reflects the content that you will be translating later on using this workflow. And then finally, experiment. So try it out, plug in Epic in your phrase ecosystem in a workflow, see how that fits in, and start running small experiments. It is really not meant to be a huge disruptive overhaul. It is much easier to take it as a measured, gradual change. You test, you learn, and you refine what works best for you. And by approaching it this way, teams usually will start seeing positive effects quickly. And if you get stuck anywhere, we are here to help, both from Phrase side and TAUS. And of course, we are very curious about what you think of the integration, how it works for you. We're open for suggestions for improvement, any changes to make it really work for you. That's it, but that was on our planned program for today. If there are any questions, we are ready to address them. Let me just quickly return to the screen so that I can actually see the questions. Okay, so there was quite a specific question from Kenneth. So this was about the language code format. Jakub, can you see the question?
Yeah.
Can you address that?
Yeah, so this is basically something that's being addressed with the orchestrator team. So it's actually going to be probably done this week, when we are going to update the template to replace the language codes. So the way to get around this is the two language codes for the moment, and because basically the format, like you mentioned there, TAUS requires dashes instead of underscores, like phrase is sending. So at the moment, it's defaulting to the two language codes, and the orchestrator team is working to update the template basically to replace the underscores with dashes, so we can send them correctly to TAUS.
Yes, and thanks, Kenneth, for this very early feedback. It definitely helps us to clean out any last missing bits in integration. And then about the Epic templates. So is it possible to show how to lock segments based on a threshold?
So the templates themselves, they don't contain the locking mechanism. That's why the template mentions it's optional, because it's not included. It can be added to the workflow, like Andrew mentioned, right? The template itself is just the basic workflow to TAUS and back, and locking segments would be additional steps in Orchestrator to basically read the MXLIF, find the segments that you wish to be locking. So it's not based on the AP threshold, because AP threshold is which segments should be touched by the automated post editing, but your locking mechanism can be different and can be actually inserted into various places, because TAUS actually ignores locked segments when the MXLIF is sent, so it will not do any edits for segments that have been logged. For example, if you have your 101s coming from the TM and they are pre-locked in the pre-translation, when we send them, they are untouched. So there are actually different ways how and where you want to be doing the locking. That's why we mentioned in the template that it's optional, because we don't want to put it into a specific place to force a workflow. So you would have to not modify the template, but add these rules into the workflow that you actually create from the template. And like I said, you could have different mechanisms locking things before, either through pre-translation or through like the QPS score, for example. So let's say you have good experience with your engine that you're using, so you pre-lock segments that have a specific, translation memory score, but also QPS score, and then you send the rest to TAUS, for example. Or on the other hand, you can have everything sent to TAUS when the jobs come back, then you look at the results, figure out which scores from TAUS are above specific threshold, and lock those, right? So like I mentioned, you need to modify the actual workflow you generate from the template, because we cannot generalize this use case enough to put it in a template.
And Jakub, you mentioned QPS, so that's your own quality performance score.
Yes.
If people were curious to compare Epic and QPS side by side, is it possible to run both on the same project?
That's where you would have the two workflow steps. You would keep the QPS scores in the first workflow step before it's sent to Epic, and the second workflow step would have another set of scores that came from Epic. So you can have both and you can compare.
And maybe to address, I believe, Helen's feedback there, or question, right? I think really, in terms of let's say the rationale between choosing between one or the other, right? I think what we've seen is that it's really about choice, right? And about particularly, I think, tied to what Dace was saying earlier around customization, right? So quality performance scoring has been purpose built to be a generic solution. Again, while powerful, it is not customized to specific domains or use cases or content types. And this is where we think the TAUS Epic solution brings a lot of value to the solution, right? And it's this ability to kind of refine and custom train both as at the deployment stage, but also on an ongoing basis, to ensure that it fully aligns with your specific requirements as well. And this is why I think, frankly, we opted to integrate with TAUS specifically, right, to give this additional optionality for those customers that have a preference for this more customized solution. But as Jakub mentioned, you can use both, right? And we have heard of customers looking to use both in some scenarios as well. So really, it's all about flexibility and optionality, but giving that kind of seamless experience throughout the entire integration.
Yeah, and I mean, who are we to tell which one is better? Because we are really not to judge there. It's whoever is the end user needs to make that call. Of course, at TAUS, this is our core. This is what we do. This is what our team focuses on every day, to make sure that the QE model that we build and publish is really the best possible at this point in time. We're also looking at all the new developments in the industry. So whenever there is any new paper published, we make sure we take that into account. Praise probably does the same as well, but it is really up to the customer to decide which one they prefer, depending on your use case. There were some more questions. So there was a general one about how to contact Phrase for support.
Yeah, and maybe I can tackle that specifically. So the first port of call would be to contact your customer success manager if you are an existing Phrase customer already. If you're not and you are kind of exploring options, I would say your named account executive and/or solutions engineer, if applicable, would definitely be able to assist. Where in doubt, you can also contact the Phrase support team directly at support@phrase.com. Who'll be able to kind of assist you. But I think particularly for Kenneth, we'll definitely look into your specific case and make sure that we can provide some tailored support as you hopefully start to kind of test the solution. So rest assured that someone will be in touch to support that as well.
And then there was also a question about supporting word level quality estimation versus segment level. At TAUS, currently we support only segment level estimations. Some people are also asking about the document level, which would take into account not just sentence by sentence, but the whole document context, which is definitely interesting. But in our experience, it is really hard to do it right, because it also would not make sense to generate average QE score on a document level that would be generated, taking all the QE scores from separate sentences and then coming up with an average, because that would then not reflect properly the perhaps some of the sentences that are totally wrong and some are that are good to go without any edits. So for now, the segment level is what we are at and what we are offering, but perhaps things change in the future and we have additional options available. Can you talk a little about pricing? So is TAUS an add-on that is payable on top of Phrase license?
Sure, maybe I can tackle that if you'd like. Yes, right. So really, the way we've approached this integration is one in the form of a co-sell, right? Where essentially you would license the solution for TAUS directly with TAUS, but then we would be able to plug that into Phrase directly as part of the setup. Now there is a small consumption-based charge that Phrase would deduct for volumes that are run through the integration, but there is no integration fee specifically for the deployment of the solution. We can definitely kind of look at the kind of the individual cases from a pricing perspective where required. I think particularly pertinent to Helen's question there. So we can definitely look at your contract and your allowances, particularly for AI units, and come back to you with a kind of tangible proposition. But there is a consumption-based charge for running the solution through Phrase, alongside the licensing directly with TAUS as well.
Yeah, and to make sure that if you just want to run a small pilot and you don't want to get charged the TAUS fee and phrase at the same time, it is also possible
Yes.
to test TAUS separately outside of phrase, just to see, get your first taster of it, and then afterwards, of course, also test it in the actual workflow.
Yes. And just to echo that, I mean, I think for any testing you want to run, we're very happy to kind of look at your individual case and kind of define the parameters alongside TAUS for you to test the solution. So again, if you are interested in testing the solution, please do let us both know. And I think in tandem with our partners at TAUS, we can come back to you with a kind of a proposition for testing.
Yes. Okay, I think that's all the questions we got. If anything comes up later, please feel free to, get in touch. And webinar recording will be shared in the coming days. Well, happy testing. We are very much looking forward to your feedback and see how we can improve. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Right.